Yep.
So 6, 3, and 4, I think when I was thinking about it, I think maybe it's very first for me to identify my mistakes first and then find the corrections for my things. So
sure.
Without identifying my mistakes, how can I just make my good?
Well, I guess sometimes it's not always easy to know what mistake you made. I've had students think they got the right answer, and then we'll go through the answer, we'll work as a team to get to the place where they fully understood that problem, and then they're like, oh, I was missing this over here. Sometimes it's not always easy to figure out what you did wrong until you've seen the kind of the full build. So an example of this is some people, when I ask them to do the derivation of the projection formula, will use a cosine. I don't always give full credit for that, especially if I don't see a student that fully understood what the whole idea of a residual. So I've marked that down a point. And some students will be like, hey, I got the full derivation, what's going on here? But the point is, in this class, the derivation of the projection formula for an inner product based on orthogonality of the residual, that is a very, very famous thing. And some students will not study that, but understand the cosine derivation. And then when they're trying to analyze their mistakes, like, I didn't make any mistakes on this. Well, the mistake was, I literally said, this is something you need to know, and you didn't study it. That's a test procedure error, right? And so from that standpoint, I generally say it's useful to get the full solution for myself before I analyze what I did wrong, because then I have all information what's in front of me, and then I can think about, oh, what was I missing on this? However, if you feel that it works better the other way, I bow to you. You know more about yourself as a learner than I know you about your learner, and I respect your processes, right? That's beautiful. Please do read about the late work. I generally expect all of you to do the best that you can to submit on time on that day. I say for 40 students or for every 10 students, I like to give the option of one late submission, because I know that stuff comes up, and I'd rather have you do a good job than do a crappy job and submit on time. But I ask you to use that as an emergency. This is not a get out of jail free card for people that tend to procrastinate. This is opportunity for students that need customized learning to come talk with me about that. And I'm going to ask you, do not submit anything late unless you and I have looked into each other's eyes and said, this is the day you're going to submit it. This is what I'm expecting from you. If that hasn't happened, then I'm not going to accept that. And I would say for most of you, plan on getting it on time. It's a useful thing for me to have them all grouped together, right? But if stuff comes up, come talk with me. Okay? Any last questions? Yeah.
You got like 1 point off on one question, and you only have that way. Why does you have to rewrite that whole problem, or do you just include some extra explanation? This is like assuming everything else is right.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of leave that as, are you asking what I would do, or are you asking for me to tell you what you should do? Okay, so what I would do is I would actually probably rewrite the whole thing. I always feel that pain is a great motivator. One of the ways, I'm 100% serious for myself, right? One of the ways that I guarantee not to make a mistake in another exam is I try to make that very painful. I think it's very easy not to feel pain when it's only points taken away. It's much, much harder for me to escape that reality if I'm like sitting down consciously reflecting on it. So my tendency personally as a student is to rewrite the entire freaking problem, because you know what's going to happen after I do that? Oh my fucking God, I got to rewrite this whole problem. It took me 20 minutes and all I had to do is explain why. I'm going to explain why next time, right? Now, that being said, if you don't rewrite the whole thing and you give me an accurate interpretation of what you were missing, I'll grade that and I'll accept that as a correction, right? Yeah, so in terms of my expectation, I'm going to ask you to give me the best that you can. I know that you have other things in your life than just this class, so I'll say, as long as you're showing me the stuff that you missed, that's what I'm asking you to take intellectual honest or intellectual responsibility for. Yep.
Are we going to be handing in our old test as well, so you can compare the two?
Where would you find very detailed directions about exactly what I expect you to hand in? And you could look at the top of page 7 for that answer. So what do I expect you all to hand in? Original graded copy of the exam. All correction instructions, so anything that you have in your correction steps 1 through 6, you're going to hand in your second sheet, and then your third sheet is going to be your entire packet. Let me say this. I've had students, this is a very rare occurrence, but I've had students that perhaps are at like a 29 out of 50, and they get into like the 42 out of 50 range through their corrections. That's a rare occurrence to be able to go from a solid F to a low B. That's called living on a prayer. I would not recommend that you plan on that. The thing that I'm looking for is deep understanding. The student that did that showed me very, very deep understanding of that material and had an analysis of the mistakes that they made, and they made changes to their study habits. So anybody recognize that some of the problems that you made on these mistakes came directly from the way that you thought about your studying or the study skills that you did? Reflect on that. I want to see, what is learning? How did we define learning? Learning is a process that leads to change. My claim is, this is an invitation. Your mistakes that you made are an invitation for you to reflect. And if I see that you're making substantive changes in your life, my claim is that I want to give credit for that. That being said, it's very, very hard to get into the high B's, low A's if you're not in the low B's to start with. Like that, do the best that you can, give me everything that you have, and I reserve the right to hold those grades and dole them out as I see fit based on the competencies that you've described to me. But the best way to do well in my class, to get really, really solid grades, is to make sure that your test algorithms, the stuff that we're working for, are working the day that you show up for a test. With that said, it's not hopeless in this class. The whole point of this is a focus on deep learning, real learning, not just show up and perform and then we'll just assign a grade for the rest of the class.